London, March 1945. Deep beneath Whitehall, in the cabinet war rooms carved into concrete and secrecy, Winston Churchill stands over a vast map of Germany. The air is stale with cigar smoke. Colored pins mark the slow constriction of the Third Reich. His eyes rest on a single blue ribbon cutting across the map, the Rhine River. The last great natural barrier between the Allied armies and the heart of Germany. For weeks, Churchill has been waiting for Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery to launch Operation Plunder, the most ambitious river assault ever attempted in Western warfare. Nearly 1 million men positioned, thousands of artillery pieces registered, airborne divisions held in readiness, bridges pre-assembled, supply depots stacked with mathematical precision, months of preparation rising like the scaffolding of a cathedral. Then a telegram arrives. Churchill reads it once, then again, and in the span of a heartbeat, the atmosphere in the room changes. The message is from General George S. Patton. It is dated that same day. The language is flat, almost casual, but every word cuts clean. The Third Army at 2200 hours on the 22nd of March 1945 crossed the Rhine quietly in darkness without benefit of aerial bombing, ground smoke, artillery preparation, or airborne assistance. Patton had crossed the river, without the cathedral, without the thunder, without waiting. To understand why that telegram struck like a shell burst beneath Whitehall, you have to understand the two men Churchill had been watching for years. They were not simply rival generals. They were rival religions of war. Bernard Montgomery embodied British military tradition, methodical, controlled, intensely self-assured. He believed war, properly conducted, was not a gamble. It was engineering. You reduced uncertainty until the outcome became inevitable. You massed overwhelming force. You calculated logistics down to the last gallon of fuel. You crushed the enemy only after ensuring he had no margin left to maneuver. He had done exactly that in North Africa. At El Alamein, he had faced Erwin Rommel's seasoned Afrika Korps and ground them down through disciplined buildup and coordinated assault. Churchill had called it the end of the beginning. Britain had needed that victory. Montgomery had delivered it. To Monty, as his soldiers called him, boldness without preparation was not courage. It was waste. George Patton lived in a different dimension entirely. Where Montgomery saw danger in moving too soon, Patton saw danger in waiting at all. Speed to him was not recklessness. It was dominance. A stunned enemy could not reorganize. A retreating enemy could not plan. Momentum itself was a weapon. He wore ivory-handled revolvers and quoted ancient cavalry commanders not as theater, but as declaration. War was violence, movement, shock. A good plan violently executed now was better than a perfect plan next week. By early 1945, the Rhine was not just geography. It was a scoreboard. Montgomery had been given the main crossing. Eisenhower had assigned him the northern sector. Operation Plunder would be the signature blow, Britain's final stamp on the European war. Planning began months earlier. Ammunition dumps multiplied. Engineers rehearsed bridge assembly in fields that resembled the riverbanks. Artillery was positioned in staggering concentration. 2 entire airborne divisions would drop behind German lines in support. Bombers would hammer defensive positions. Smoke screens would blind observers. It would be overwhelming, theatrical, unstoppable. Montgomery intended it to be remembered. But 200 miles south, Patton was staring at a different stretch of river. The Germans were not fools. Intelligence told them a major crossing was imminent. They knew Montgomery's habits. They knew he would mass power in the north, so they reinforced that sector heavily. Anti-aircraft guns, infantry, artillery, defensive works layered in anticipation, and in doing so they thinned the south. Near Oppenheim, Patton's reconnaissance patrols reported something remarkable. German units defending that sector were battered remnants, disorganized, under strength, lacking coordinated artillery support. The enemy expected thunder in the north, not silence in the south. Patton studied the riverbank through field glasses, wide, Cold, fast, dangerous. No bombers allocated, no massive artillery curtain, no airborne reserve to bail him out if it collapsed. If he failed, it would be catastrophic. If he succeeded, he would cross before Montgomery ever fired a preparatory shell. On the evening of March 22, 1945, he made his decision. They would cross that night. At 2200 hours, American infantry moved toward the water under cover of darkness. No artillery barrage announced their approach. No smoke screens masked their silhouettes. Boats slid quietly into the current. The Rhine flowed black beneath a moonless sky. Silence. No searchlights. No immediate barrage from the far bank. German defenders in that sector were not expecting this. Not here, not without warning. The first boats reached the eastern shore. Troops disembarked and moved quickly inland. Resistance was scattered and confused. Close-range fighting flared briefly in the darkness. Engineers followed immediately, working by red-filtered light to assemble pontoon bridges. By dawn, structures were already spanning the current. Before sunrise, American armor began rolling east. The Rhine, Hitler's symbolic shield, the line no enemy had crossed in generations, had been breached in a single night. Patton did not keep it quiet. He drafted his report with surgical precision. The phrasing was deliberate, without aerial bombing, without ground smoke, without artillery preparation, without airborne assistance. He did not mention Montgomery. He did not need to. Every resource he listed was exactly what Montgomery had spent months assembling. When the telegram reached Eisenhower's headquarters, disbelief gave way to recognition. Patton had altered the sequence of history by acting first. The message was forwarded to London. Churchill read it beneath Whitehall. He understood instantly what it meant. Operation Plunder was meant to be Britain's culminating moment, Montgomery's masterpiece. A demonstration that deliberate preparation, not American impulsiveness, had guided the alliance to victory. Now an American general had crossed first, quietly, swiftly, without spectacle. Churchill's reaction, as later accounts recorded, was concise. Patton beat you. 3 words, no flourish, no lecture, just verdict. The following night, Montgomery's guns opened. Thousands of artillery pieces roared in synchronized fury. The northern sky lit like a second sunrise. Bombers droned overhead. Operation Varsity unfolded as airborne divisions descended behind German lines in one of the largest airborne operations of the war. Assault waves hit the water in meticulously rehearsed order. It was overwhelming. It was spectacular. It was successful, but it was no longer first. German defenders, alerted by Patton's crossing, were better prepared than they might have been. Resistance stiffened. Casualties mounted higher than surprise might have allowed. Montgomery crossed with thunder. Patton had crossed with silence. 200 miles south, the Third Army was already driving deep into Germany, each hour converted into miles. German formations, already strained by multi-front pressure, fractured faster under momentum than under bombardment. Operation Plunder achieved every military objective. It was textbook execution. By conventional standards, it was triumph. But glory does not follow textbooks. It follows sequence. Montgomery had done everything right. He had reduced risk. He had protected his men. He had ensured success. Patton had done something else. He had acted when the window was open. The war in Europe ended weeks later. Germany collapsed under converging pressure. The Rhine ceased to matter, but reputations endured. Eisenhower gradually narrowed Montgomery's operational authority in the final phase of the campaign. There was no public humiliation, no dramatic dismissal, just administrative gravity shifting toward commanders who demonstrated flexibility and tempo. Churchill never forgot the lesson of the river, and history, in its blunt way, chose its headline. The Rhine is remembered less as Montgomery's meticulously prepared assault and more as Patton's audacious crossing. Not because Montgomery failed, he did not, but because in war, first across the river writes the story. Montgomery's philosophy was not weakness. It was caution born of experience. It had saved lives before. Patton's philosophy was not recklessness. It was timing sharpened into instinct. On the Rhine, timing won the narrative. Sometimes the difference between triumph and legend is not magnitude. It is who moved first. And beneath Whitehall in March 1945, 3 quiet words sealed that judgment forever.